is just in any way not. Did I cut out?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. I think
it's
we've
bad.
sufficiently just. It's a bad thing to say because that was the original question.
What if I retorted? I think we significantly rebutted your shit. What if I retorted that?
You had no look. The question. Let's repeat.
You agreed with us.
The question. Bad thing to say.
The closest you came. The closest you came to rebuttal is saying perhaps liberals exaggerate it a bit.
Well, but he didn't even say that. The phrasing was, he said, white nationalism is a hoax and it's used by other people to further divide the nation. Everyone needs to relax so that we can focus on the issues at hand.
I think what you guys are doing is, I know what's going on here. There's going to be, we're talking past.
Let's go back and forth, Shameless. That was somebody on your side. Let's
hold on.
So, Zach, I could just give you an analogy for that, right? So let's say that there's I could go, illegal immigration's a hoax. Right-wing media just uses that as a talking point. Do you think that that's a problem statement for me to say?
Well, that's different because he didn't. Well, hold on. Let me finish. That's different because he didn't name specific. He didn't like. I thought it was pretty apt that he didn't name. You know, we know who he's talking about, but he didn't go the goddamn leftists or leftist news outlets. He just said used by people, and that's where I took issue with the outcry.
Okay, just change the last part of the statement from right news outlets to people.
Exactly.
Okay.
Illegal immigration's a hoax. It's used by people to scare other people.
Wait, Jovan, can I be heard now?
Let him respond to that. Let Zach respond.
And what do you want me to say? And what do you want me to say?
I'm guessing you see that as a problem statement because you would think that illegal immigration isn't simply a hoax. That you would think that it's.
Oh right,
So you would think that that's a problem.
I agree that the phrasing. I agree that the phrasing isn't the best. Like I'm not saying he didn't do. He's not guilty of bad phrasing. What I was more getting at is that I think that the outcry in response to what he said is disproportionate to the message that he was portraying.
That's social media.
Yeah, but that's also a different claim entirely. Like you just asked me if I thought
I asked you a question. I didn't make a claim.
No. I'm just saying you asked me a question. Was it a bad thing to say?
And you answered it.
Right, but nobody's disagreeing with the answer that we provided. So when Shameless says, we were sufficiently bullshit or whatever, that's just not true.
The closest thing Seamus said is that liberals over-exaggerate the problem. That's the closest, and I don't think that's a good.
No, look, we're just talking past each other. It's pretty clear. What you mean by good is not what I mean by good. What I'm saying is if it's morally good, right? Like if he said, let's put X people in concentration camps, we all agree that that's not morally good, okay? And so Hogan, it seems like when he's talking about goodness, he's appealing to some type of pragmatic in relation to some goal, something like that, in relation to keeping his job, in relation to not sparking outrage culture, in relation to whatever like that. So at best, you're just talking past me, Hogan. So don't go ahead and declare victory yet.
That seemed completely tangential to what I was saying. Like if you're just going to claim I'm talking past you, then what you said originally, which was that we've sufficiently refuted your bullshit, would just be false, right?
No, I was saying that
you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't simultaneously say you refuted my bullshit and that I'm also talking.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It went over your head. I was using that as a rhetorical device by showing you that doesn't get you anywhere in a debate by saying, I think we've sufficiently justified. What if the person just said, we sufficiently retorted? And what if you said, no, he didn't? And no, you didn't. What I'm saying is it's rhetorical to show you that that's just pointless. Okay, that's just you being a sophist.
I think you're just posturing.
One day you'll probably realize
this is just like a waste of time. You're not even responding to the point anymore.
No.
Like if this is just going to be meta, I'm not interested.
Oh, you're not interested.
Yeah,
okay,
it's just meta. Like you're not actually.
So do you think that statement is morally wrong, morally bad?
I've given a sufficient explanation of what I mean.
No, just stop running away. What
I'm not running away. The question was answered.
I don't think anyone's saying like that utterance is morally wrong, Seamus.
What did you mean by
Seamus? Look, Seamus, you do this every time you don't get your way in a discussion, right? Somebody explains their view, then you ask a question. You ask a question that has to do with the explanation.
It sounds like you're doing
you ask a question. You ask a question that has to do with the explanation that was already offered, and then when somebody justifiably says, I don't have to answer that because I already did in my explanation, you get pissed. Not interested. You can keep fucking around. You can keep flipping out over the mic. That's fine. Just don't waste my time.
I'm just asking you an additional question. What is
the same question? No, it's a question that was answered in the explanation I provided.
So somebody heard the answer, I presume. I presume somebody heard the answer. So what did he mean by bad? What did he mean by bad or wrong?
Anybody that was paying attention to my answer could answer, or my response could answer that question.
What do you think it was in relation to what?
The same thing you said when you said that you agree that it was a bad thing to do, Seamus. Like, are you disagreeing?
I never agreed to that. Go back and rewind the tape. I'll bet you $1 million I never said that. You want to know what I said? I agreed with.
Wait, but you made a consequentialist appeal.
That's what I conceded. That it was a sloppy use of language. I never conceded that it was bad. If you go back, Jovan, how about this? We'll just bet gentlemen's bet $5.
That's what he means. Is that it wasn't a good choice of words to use in that situation.
Look, no, that doesn't mean that it's morally bad. That doesn't mean that it's morally bad.
Nobody's saying it's
morally bad. Nobody said it's fucking
dumb.
Morally bad categorically.
Why do you keep saying that dumb?
You're just like this. Look, Seamus, you do this every fucking time, dude. Hey, here's my explanation of my view. Well, okay, here's a question that was already answered by your explanation. I'm not going to answer that question because I already answered it in my explanation.
Don't you realize
so are you saying it's morally bad now? Are you making a categorical moral claim? Huh?
Listen,
do you have some moral system that I was previously unaware of? No, you fucking dumbass.
Don't you realize
consequentialist appeal that everybody understood because they commented on the fact that I gave an explanation and said, yeah, that makes sense, or yeah, that's why it would be a bad thing to say, right? So fuck off.
No one's disagreeing with that. No one's disagreeing with that. You're just taking you're just being pissy because you know like bad stuff's gonna happen to you.
You are wasting our time. Nobody's making a categorical moral claim, buddy.
It doesn't have to be categorical.
Hey, buddy.
It doesn't have to be categorical.
Listen to me, buddy.
It could be a moral claim that's not categorical.
Hal, calm down, friend. Listen, nobody's making a categorical moral claim. Okay?
It doesn't have to be categorical.
We appealed to the consequences of such a statement and why it would be bad in virtue of said consequences. Now, when somebody says X is bad, right, it's not actually justified to assume that they're talking about a categorical moral claim.
It has nothing to do with categoricity.
Over. And if you are interested in my explanation or you would like it repeated, you are more than encouraged. I wasn't done speaking. Hey, I wasn't done. You're more than encouraged. You're more than encouraged to review the tape for yourself and hear the explanation again. It's that easy.
Listen, I'm gonna say something now. It has nothing to do with categoricity. Do you think an error theorist believes in categorical moral norms?
You seem to be asking me if it was a moral claim.
No. I'm asking. Listen, now you're talking over me again. You're saying no one's saying that it was categorical moral norm. I said it was morally wrong. That doesn't mean I'm appealing to categorical moral norms. Are error theorists? Do they think categorical moral norms? Do moral subjectivists? So what you said, you misspoke because. When I just said that it was morally, but when it was not morally wrong, I wasn't presupposing categoricity.
Do you think I'm forwarding moral relativism or any other form of morality when I say it's bad? And if so, what's the justification for thinking that?
You were accusing me. That's what you were accusing me of.
That's a question. Seamus, that's a question. What if you think I'm talking about morality? What system of morality am I putting forward when I say X is bad?
Oh, you weren't the one that you were the one that accused me of that.
That was a question.
Listen, I'm going to answer it very succinctly.
So what moral system? You don't have to give me a 5-hour dissertation on what it is. You can just say it.
Look,
I understand the system.
You're confused at the dialectic.
What's the system?
You said no one needs to. You said no one needs to inject categorical moral norms, accusing me of doing that. And all I said was that it was not morally wrong. But that statement doesn't presuppose categorical moral norms.
What's the system?
Because people could be an error theorist, moral subjectivist, etc.
Look, direct question.
Yes, I did notice he's not answering the question.
What system?
Yeah, I'll answer the. All you didn't forward any system. All you said was the word.
So when you ask me if I'm making a moral claim, when I didn't forward.
No, I never asked you that.
Stop. What? Are you insane?
I never asked you if you were making a moral claim.
What?
I asked you if what your notion was putting forth was pragmatic or in relation to some goal.
You directly asked me if it was a moral claim.
Yeah,
you're a fucking liar.
That's not what you
said. Okay. Who wants to have a bet? That's what I said. Who wants to have a bet?
Pragmatic, and did you think you're saying those words exactly? Is that
yes, those words exactly. Who wants to bet? We'll have a gentleman's bet. $20 or something. $10.
That's fucking bullshit.
Yes, I did. Well, it's recorded. Let's just bet.
Not.
Okay, let's bet. Let's have a gentleman's bet. $5, $10, whatever.
I'm not going to put. I'm not going to put money.
No, I know what I know. What I said.
Number one, Seamus, I'd like to respond. Number one, you're a bet welcher, so I'm not putting any money on anything with you. Number two, nobody seems to recall you saying that verbatim. So you're just clearly bullshitting now to try to get out of the box I put you in.
Well, it's not clear.
Okay, well...
It's not clear.
Well, I do know exactly what I said, and you're just going to look like a fucking idiot when this live stream...
This is just you doubling down on a lie.
I don't think...
Okay, this is just you with
very interesting, though. It's just two people yelling. Can we just either move on?
I don't know what the original...
Listen, all I'm saying is what Pogan...
You can just...
what Pogan said...
You can just...
Tucker Carlson's a cunt, and that's that.
You can go back in the live stream. You can do it right now and just go to the live stream.
I encourage anyone to do that and see if what Seamus said. Seamus's claim is that he said verbatim it was pragmatic, right?
Yeah.
That he never asked me. That he never asked me if that it was a moral claim, right? Never interrogated me as to why or if it was a moral claim. So you can rewind the live stream, and you can review exactly what he said. And if he said it verbatim, then he's correct. But it doesn't seem like anybody recalls him saying that verbatim at all. It seems like more people seem to remember me being asked if it was a moral claim, which is exactly what I fucking said.
Look, I could tell by your use of language that you didn't mean it morally. I could tell specifically that you meant it pragmatically, like it was bad in relation to outrage culture.
Then why would you ask me if it was a moral
bad in
claim
relation
if
to some
it was
goal?
pragmatic?
Because I never asked you that.
Just you two saying, yeah, nuh-uh, yeah, huh.
No, this is him just droning on about it. Look, fine, we'll do that.
Either go back to the recording or just stop it.
I'm cool with that. Done. Let's just go back to what I was saying earlier. When Pogan, you said no one needs to bring up.
No one.
So now you're.
You can either go back to the recording or you can let him talk.
Who's interested? Who's interested in him just lying and then moving past it?
You don't get
no. Look, just be honest with yourself.
That's true.
Don't you agree? Don't you agree?
Look, hold on. I was speaking to Jovan, right? I'm not going to prevent him from speaking. But what I am going to do is refuse to engage him with further questions until he concedes that he was lying or he produces some sort of evidence that he was. Fantastic. Okay. I'll just quietly play Overwatch while he monologues and wastes our time.
Yeah, that's good.
Look, I would just ask Pogan one question. Do you think when I said Pogan, I think that was what I meant? You're talking past each other. What you guys meant was some pragmatic notion of truth. And what I meant that it was, pragmatic notion of badness or wrongness. And what I meant is that it's morally wrong. And then you said, no one needs your bullshit injection of categorical moral norms. What? Just because I brought up the word that I think it's morally wrong, does it? Yeah, but I want him to concede. I would like for him to concede.
That, yes. Wait, okay, just Pogan. You concede that not all morality centers around categorical norms, right?
Yeah, I'm not a fucking retard.
But okay, so why? You understand that? Wait, let me cut. So you understand that when you said that to Chamos, you're incorrect or you're misspeaking.
That's why. Right? Well, obviously. That's why the follow-up question was, okay, what system were you talking about when you asked me the question?
Well, no, the point is when you said,
are you just trying to get me to concede that it wasn't necessarily categorical?
Yes.
No, all I said was the word morally wrong. And then you went ahead and jumped off the cliff and said, oh, you're injecting categorical moral norms. No, I didn't. All I said was the word morally wrong. And there's a whole host of theories that are compatible with moral use of language and are not speaking about category. Okay,
nobody's contending that that's the case. What we're contending is that you are lying about what you said when you started bringing morality into the conversation.
Okay, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it right now. We'll just burn Pogan on live stream. Give me like 15 minutes.
Fucking idiot.
So
Jovan, can you invite me to the party?
Keep in mind, I'm going to say one thing before I mute up and go find this. I'm going to mute up and say one thing, and then I'll mute up. Basically, you guys will know because I said, I think we're speaking past each other, and that's exactly when I said pragmatic. And then I'll show it to you.
That was after.
Wait, but the claim was just that you asked me if it was a moral matter.
That was a couple minutes into the.
Notice how he's already changing. He's already changing the fucking claim.
You'll notice
I was talking. I was speaking. He's already changing the fucking claim to be compatible with this new bullshit he's putting on the table, right? Remember that the question was just if he asked me about anything pertaining to morality. If the recording shows that he asked that question or something comparable to that question, I'm justified in saying what I said.
Yeah, but you'll notice from the context that I'm going to provide that I accused you of speaking past me on the grounds.
You mean the ad hoc explanation?
Jovan, maybe Jovan remembers this. Maybe I'll spark his memory. Jovan, do you remember me saying, "Hey guys, I think you're speaking past each other"?
Fucking stupid.
And then right after that,
just such
literally the next sentence, I'm going to fucking find it and burn you on live stream. So you're about to get toasted. And I said, I think the reason you're speaking past each other is because you're speaking about pragmatically or in relation to some goal.
Claim is. Look, we're just interested.
Why would I ask you if it was moral if I already claimed I knew your view?
We're just interested in whether or not you
did ask about the moral. Like, you did say the moral.
Okay, so here's the thing.
That's all we're interested. Look, Jovan just corroborated what I've been saying.
So I'm denying that I never said that. So here's the thing. You're making the claim
that you never said it. What?
What I'm saying is I'm denying that I said it.
Did you not ask me about morality?
Listen.
Yes or no? Did you or did you not?
Hogan, if we both just listen, like, calm down. Everyone, just calm the fuck down.
Fucking lying.
Listen, I'm trying to propose something that I think is extremely reasonable. Listen, I think I'm trying to propose something that's extremely reasonable, and you'll see that I'm being reasonable. Initially, I said I was going to go look for this, but basically, what I have to look is through the whole tape of me not saying something. Now it's not a positive claim; it's a negative claim. So what I think is, it would now in order to fulfill the burden, I have to view the entire video. And how do I prove? Here's the entire 30 minutes of the last 30 minutes, and I never said that. How do I prove that without you watching it side by side? So here's the thing. Hogan, if he wants to keep bringing this up, he brings it. He either fucking finds it himself, or he shuts the fuck up. Because there's no good way to.
That's ridiculous.
There's three people.
There's no reasonable way to approach this.
We don't even
because he's making.
Find it.
Look, we can make a justified inference.
Seamus, what's the claim that he's making?
We can make a justified inference. We can make a justified inference without appealing to the recording, as Chum said, in virtue of the fact
that I'm reviewing it.
In virtue of the fact that 3 people are now corroborating my claim, right? Now, if you dispute that being a justified inference, the burden is on you to review the recording. I'm not going to fucking go out of my way to look back at the live stream.
Listen, I can't prove it to you, though. That's the thing.
Wait,
think about if I went through the recording.
So you just threatened to burn me on
listen to what I'm saying. You're confused. Listen to what I'm saying. So let's say that I go back and I watch the entire past 30 minutes. And then I watch it and I never said that. Then I come back and say, guys, I watched it and I never said that. How do I prove it to you? You have to sit fucking beside me. We have to watch the whole 30-minute thing. So here's the deal. I can't do that. And it's unreasonable to ask me to do that. I'm denying the claim. Hold on, I'm not done speaking. I'm denying the claim.
Well,
and if you go on about this, it's only fair that you find it.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
That's reasonable. You don't think that's reasonable, Joe?
That's not necessarily true, though.
Seamus, what is he claiming you're saying? I'm going to find it.
I don't get it. Why don't you hold on? Seamus, why don't you state what your position is now, and why don't you all work with what his position is?
But I still want to find.
No, because Hogan said he will no longer engage in the discussion until I admit I lied.
That's because
I thought you were off to prove something you had found.
Look, first of all, I could just be mistaken. So
just
admitting that I lied.
What I need to find in the tape.
I just
There's
told
background
you.
knowledge to think that you're a chronic.
Just tell me what I need to find in the tape.
Hogan, what did you think he just said? Just to tell JJ real quick.
My only claim was that he asked me if it was a moral matter or asked a comparable question about morality.
There you go, JJ.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. When I said we're speaking past each other, I already summed your view up and said you're completely speaking about some goal or something like that, some type of pragmatic goodness or badness.
It's just a tremendous fucking waste of time. Like,
what's a waste of time, and why do you keep talking over people?
Let him finish.
And so I made that distinction. And so I mean, what originally what I was just saying is that with respect to that distinction, that was literally all I was putting forward, Hogan. And so I think that you're just freaking out right now, and now you're refusing to engage. And
this is just shifting the narrative. You were just screaming at me for like 5 minutes straight about the fact that you apparently didn't ask me about morality, which is false. Right? We have had 3 people speak up and say that you did indeed ask a question comparable to that. And now you're trying to act like I'm freaking out when you were fucking threatening to burn me on a YouTube live stream.
What I said by burn you is basically prove the evidence that you're wrong.
You're not understanding the point. My point is that you're changing the narrative, right? You're shifting to a more defensible position because you know that it's going to be shown that you asked that question, right? You're not fooling anyone.
This whole discussion has been about morality, right? You both agree?
Listen. Do you think that I thought that you were talking about moral goodness? Because in fact, I denied that.
I've been consistent with my claim, and you're not going to get me to shift from my claim. The claim is, you asked me about morality when I expressed that what Tucker Carlson said was bad. Okay? At some point in the conversation, you asked about morality.
I asked if you thought it was morally wrong.
Don't overtalk me. Hey, 3 people have corroborated that, right? So if you think it's the case that you didn't ask that, you're more than welcome to provide the evidence. But until you concede that you were lying about not asking that question, I'm not going to engage.
Well, he's factually wrong, that's for sure. And I mean, as a journalist, you should be.
You could just admit that he was wrong about it. You don't
have
to say that he was lying.
And as a news journalist, he should.
Well, like I said, there's background knowledge.
Yeah, but I'm just saying you could just.
Why is everyone over talking me today?
Sorry, Chum.
And as a news journalist, he should definitely be.
I did ask him. I did ask
you too. And as a news journalist, he should know better. I posted some very relevant data here, which shows the rise of white supremacy, not just in America but worldwide as well, including number of attacks, number of gatherings, and number of organizations. It went from about 100 to 150 just in the last year alone. So he's definitely false. Definitely doesn't know what and just one more thing as well. He said specifically his claim was he didn't think that the number of white supremacists in the country would be more than could fit in a college stadium, and that's false as well. So, all right, anyone can go now.
Who said those things that was false?
Tucker Carlson said
those things, yeah.
He thinks it's largely a hoax. He thinks it's just a handful of people. He doesn't think that the numbers of white supremacists and Nazis would be more in the entire country than would fill a college stadium.
That's ridiculous. That's fucking ridiculous.
Well, okay, that's nice to know. Look, I want to just go back for a second and try to recap to Joe what had happened during the conversation. It was just something like this. Zaximum brought up something about Tucker Carlson being fired for saying white supremacy.
Well, they're calling for it, but yeah.
And he basically asked. He was like, "Do you think that that's wrong, or that that's bad?" Or I think he said wrong, and then Pogan said, "Yeah, that's bad." And then the way that Pogan was talking about it, it was with respect to people's attitudes and with respect to his job. That wasn't
what Zaximum asked either, though.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is he asked. Listen, when someone says, "Do you think that's bad?"
That's not what he said.
He said wrong.
I'll tell you exactly what he said then, since you just keep.
Do you think he should be fired? Yeah.
This is what he said. No, he said there are a bunch of leftists arguing, freaking out on media, saying that that Tucker Carlson should be fired. Do you think that Tucker Carlson should be fired for that?
Oh, okay. So Pogan answered with a non sequitur then, by your own admission.
Pogan said, "Look, I don't understand the question. It's up to the private company whether or not they should be fired." And then,
okay, yeah, I remember that.
Then Zaximum said, "Well, what do you think? What do you think that he should be?" Like it's something that bad in that situation to say, and then Pogan's like, well, given the blah blah blah, and he started talking about like pragmatic.
Right. Yeah, but Pogan doesn't even think that. He complains about being unjustly muted, but this is my server, right?
But that's how he got onto it.
He never mentioned anything about morality, and then when
I agree. I agree
said
with
something
you
about morality, they even clarified, no, that's not what I meant.
Right.
Well,
so listen, let's start here.
I was even honest enough to concede.
Let Shamos go. He wanted to hear it, so let him respond now.
Look, that's exactly what he said. He said something like, "Was that a bad thing to say?" And then Pogan said, "Yeah, that's bad." And so it's kind of open to what, but the way that Pogan said it was in relation to how people would react. Or
no, it's not.
Job or
because
something.
I appealed to the consequences of saying that. It wasn't a moral matter at any point.
No, I'm not saying that. That's
like, why are you lying?
Pogan, just let him go.
You just misunderstood me.
You can correct it. Just let him go.
I never claimed that you made a moral claim. Never. So if you just heard that, you've misunderstood me. Okay, I'm going to say it very clearly. I never ever stated that you made a moral claim. So rest assured of that. Okay. So what's going on here is when he said, "Was that a bad thing to say?" Pogan was open to his interpretation of badness, and I think the wit he was appealing to was that it was bad with respect to how people would react. Bad with respect to how he would use his job. That's why it was a bad thing to say, right? And so and then Pogan said, you haven't succinctly refuted my position, and my position's been justified, right? Trying to flout it in my face. And I said, listen, motherfucker, you're just talking past me, because me and Zaximum, or I know that me specifically, when I said that that's not bad, I meant morally. That's not morally wrong for him to say that. Now, if he said, like, let's go put X people in concentration camps, that statement is morally wrong, but not the one there. And so that's how it got started. Okay.
So I did find where Seamus asked Pogan what he meant by bad.
Yeah. Okay. Matter closed. Claim justified.
What you meant by bad?
That you asked me about morality, which was what I was saying.
Well, what do you mean by bad isn't necessarily asking.
Right. Yeah, of course it isn't. That's ridiculous.
I just want to hear the conversation surrounding about what Seamus said in real place.
Look, you want to know what's so silly about what Pogan just did? Hold on, I want to bring up something so silly. He just presupposed that it was bad and that it was moral. I'm not going to
let you twist my words. Look,
oh my God.
Look, the point is...
Hold on, just mute him. This will be hilarious.
When Zaximum asked for an explanation, I gave a consequentialist appeal, right? Well, it's bad because blah, blah, blah. And then to ask me anything like, is that moral or is that bad, clearly demonstrates that he's not understanding that I'm talking about a consequentialist approach, right?
Well, a consequentialist approach could be moral.
Why do you think I responded by talking? Look, I conceded that it was wrong to presuppose he was forwarding categorical moral systems, right? But why do you think I asked if he was injecting categorical moral systems into the discussion? If it's not pragmatic, and if it's not consequentialist, then he's suggesting I'm making a moral appeal, which is what I've been saying for the entire conversation.
I've never suggested that. I suggested that it was all relational to some goal. No, it was relational to some goal, like what people would think, or keeping your job. I in fact accused you of giving a pragmatic account of that. And the tape will prove that to be true.
I think I heard that part.
The whole thing is, this is just Pogan trying to justify running away. Look, let me just say one thing that's really, really ironic. Pogan just a minute ago accused me of using that type of language and saying that presupposed that it was moral. But in fact, that was the same language he used earlier that he's saying wasn't moral. That just shows how silly. That just shows that's literally a contradiction right there.
You completely bypassed the point that I made.
Yeah, that's literally it's useless. That's literally a contradiction.
It's just useless to talk to you, right? Because no matter how many explanations you're given, no matter how many justifications you're provided, you're going to twist the discussion in whatever way that fits your narrative. Which is what you've been doing.
Okay, let's see who talks about meta less.
Which is what you've been doing.
Let's see who talks about meta less.
Which is what you've been doing. Which is what you've been doing for the last 30 minutes.
More meta, I see. Great, more meta. This is good. I've been talking about the discussion the whole fucking time. What was said?
That's a fucking lie. You just started grandstanding about my behavior.
Well, let's just say that I've been talking about it. Yeah. It wasn't 100. It wasn't 100% of the time.
Pogan means something
Pogan,
other
you
than
got
100%.
Yeah.
Just a fucking idiot.
You got me. Actually, that's not true though. When people say that, they're just saying it figuratively.
Right.
So that's not even true there.
This is officially a waste of my. Like, it's just again twists the discussion to fit his narrative.
Listen,
at every turn.
You can
I'm gonna play Overwatch.
Do a quick check.
You grandstand as much as you like, Seamus.
All you have to do is ask me the simple question if I think that's true, and I would say no.
Just take the win, Seamus.
Look, do you really think that when I said that, I meant the entire 100% of the time I've never, ever talked about meta? Do you really think that that's what I meant? No, that's not a charitable interpretation.
Yeah, that's an absolutely reasonable interpretation. And Seamus, that's how we use language all the time, isn't it, right? That's an honest interpretation of what you... That's fucking bullshit.
Exactly.
It's just absolutely...
No, that's exactly how language operates and naturally. And so it's just hilarious for him to go ahead and be like, I got you. I got you. Like, it's so sad, man.
I didn't listen to what you just said there, but to be fair, in that conversation, I thought you were being a little dense with the morality because you kept bringing morality into it.
Wait, Sam, were you disagreeing with Seamus?
No, I agreed with Seamus. No,
okay. It just sounded like sarcastic or something.
Yeah, I was being sarcastic, but no, I agreed. Like, when someone says, yeah, I agreed.
No, let me see if I can say, Jovan, what I think the most fucked up part about the whole discussion was. That remember when he said, look, I said, but I think that's not wrong, or that's not bad. And then he went on to give reasons on his view of why it was bad, the pragmatic appeal. And then he said, and you haven't, I've given a rational justification for my position, and you've done nothing to refute it, right? And then I just told him that what he just said is ridiculous because we're speaking past each other. And so it was just hilarious that he was already starting to stump his chest, like, oh, it's already been justified, and her, without even a second thought that we might be speaking past each other. That's why I thought it was really funny.
Oh, fuck.
Has he done grandstanding?
Well, I wouldn't call that grandstanding.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
I mean, it's clearly, he's clearly, again...
Oh, don't argue for it. Let's not.
Look, I've said it a few times, right? Twists the narrative. Sorry, twists the discussion
you
rather to fit his narrative.
Yeah, more meta.
Already said it, you don't have to say it again, though.
I don't look. I can say
No. I'm just saying you don't need it because if you say it again, people are just going to get annoyed. I'm just trying to help you out with that. I'm saying if you keep repeating it, people are just going to get annoyed with you. Whether you're right or wrong.
My question was if he was done grandstanding.
I know, but you said.
And then you went on to make a diatribe
about it. You literally said.
No. I said I'm not going to.
No. I'm not going to engage.
I'm not going to.
You said you can grandstand as much as you want. So you saying, look, is he done grandstanding now?
I'm not going to engage him was the claim, right?
But
asking
you
if he's done,
you can grandstand as much as you want now.
Asking if he's done grandstanding is not engaging Shamos.
You're asking him a question.
No. Are you done grandstanding would be a question directed at him. It's like fucking stupid. These people.
What?
If he done grandstanding is a question directed at everyone, right?
Fine.
Are you done grandstanding?
And then you went on to grandstand.
The question was
right
is
after
he
said that. No, and then after that you spoke some more and you said all he does is sit in here and grandstand, and then you were about to go on a fucking diatribe. That's when Jovan stopped you. Do you not even remember
about twisting the narrative.
Yeah, those were the exact words. Yeah, those were the exact words. You don't remember saying that, Pogi? But all he's doing is grandstanding, sitting around, twisting the narrative, going back in your bullshit.
Which is being perceived as grandstanding.
Yeah. My last thing is this. That
you take turns grandstanding.
Pogan's original grandstanding about, look, this has been justified and you haven't adequately refuted it, was just presupposing that I was speaking about the same notion of badness that he was. And then I said, look, kid, you're not thinking about this very clearly. We're speaking past each other. I meant that it's not morally wrong, et cetera, et cetera. And then the kid just spazzes out and tries to run away while looking cool doing it or whatever. I mean, I don't know what kind of brownie points you think you're going to make. I'm just sitting here trying to have a fucking conversation.
I don't know if that's necessarily true, but yeah.
But my final thoughts on the original issue for discussion is that I really don't think it's morally wrong. Now, of course, pragmatically speaking, that in reference to people freaking out or possibly potentially losing his job, yeah, it could be said to been a bad choice of words or been a bad thing to say, I guess was the original way that we put it. For sure.
You're saying it's not morally wrong what Tucker Carlson said?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But I do think there are some statements that are morally wrong. Like we said, just throw all the blacks in the concentration camps. Of course that's morally wrong. But just saying something like white supremacy is a hoax, and what he meant by it is something like, the leftist media just keeps trying to blow this white supremacy thing out of proportion. I don't think that's morally wrong. I think that's
it isn't.
Yeah, and that's why when Pogan was saying, I've justified my point and you haven't refuted it. You're just speaking past each other, because I really wanted to point to the fact that, of course, that's going to be against some of your interests, right? That we could concoct. But I don't think it's morally wrong thing to say. And I think that Zaxmon was looking at it like it wasn't a morally wrong thing to say.
Well,
you can look at it surrounding his audience to go ahead.
He has an obligation to be informed, and he has a position where he informs people of the news. So it would be morally wrong for him to speak ignorantly about things that he's either uninformed about or that he's lying about.
Well, you need to clean up your language. It's never morally wrong to speak ignorantly about something, right? And if what you mean is like being ignorant.
Well, I didn't say that.
Okay, that's fine.
I said in his case, it's morally wrong because of other factors like his position of authority in people's eyes about delivering trusted content like his news, basically. Does that help explain that?
Yeah, but you got to understand, like you showed that it was like a 50 or 60% increase from last year of white supremacy, right? But when he and,
well, it's not just that.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is when he said it was a hoax, he's making there's some type of evaluative judgment going on there, right? And it's not
well,
to say that
he can be hyperbolic, obviously, but
like,
I'm not
even saying...
even if he's being hyperbolic, I don't see that it changes it because of the Department of
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, what criterion constitutes the hoax? At what level of overrepresentation constitutes a hoax? And that's going to be a very subjective kind of arbitrary criterion. And so what I'm saying is,
right.
So
but
when you're saying, look, it's rose 60%, you don't know in what way he's evaluating that it's a hoax.
Yeah, but just a second though. You wouldn't say that something that's the result of the majority of violent extremist attacks or whatever would be a hoax, right? Like even if it's hyperbolic, that wouldn't follow at all. And that would be something that's just not, definitely at least ignorant, if not dishonest.
What if he said what was a hoax? That these people do violent attacks?
Well, the fact is that they actually constitute statistically more than half of all the attacks that go on. So you wouldn't say that calling something like that a hoax is
all the attacks
justified
that gone on. All the attacks that gone on where, when? What are we?
In America, I mean, they're on the rise worldwide.
So what do you mean by attack? So over 50% of all attacks in America were done by white supremacists? You're talking about a specific type of attack.
Extremist attacks, yeah.
Oh, okay. And so, right. Yeah, that's probably fitting. That's probably fitting. Don't you think that that there's like the same would be true for like Islamists in the other country? People that were heavy on that. Why do you think it is?
Right, but you wouldn't say that Islamic terror attacks are a hoax.
No, but what I'm saying is that when you look here and then you look here, let me see if I can think of a good way to say this.
Well, I'm asking you what you disagree with that I said. Do you disagree with anything that I said?
Well, you were saying something like, when he said that white supremacy is a hoax, that he needs to be informed and he owes the consumers of his media some type of accountability, right. And he was wrong about the facts. Look here, and you showed some facts that you alleged that he was wrong about. But what I'm saying is, at the center of it lies an evaluative judgment, right? At what point of overrepresentation? Here's the number of attacks, and here's the level of representation in the media. At what percentage of overrepresentation relative to the attacks constitutes hoax? Okay, and what I'm saying is, when he says that was a hoax, that you're saying, look at these facts, but you don't know exactly at what point he's saying that's a hoax. Like, for example, like if there's 50% of all attacks.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to say that even as a news person, if that's the kind of thinking that he's using, then he shouldn't be in his line of work if he's just going to be a sophist about it like that.
Well, I don't think it's being
like,
a sophist.
You want me to
what
give
I'm
you like
is...
if it's below 10%, then it's a hoax. I mean, look, if all you're saying that the content of a statement was supposed to point to is just saying that people are trying to blow up this issue and it's not a big issue or whatever, he could have just said, I think people are over exaggerating the consequences of this.
Right. Yeah, let's not for just the next few minutes. Let's not use the word hoax. I think it could lead to some confusion. Let's go with the concept you were just. No. What we're both saying and agreeing on is that what the interpretation of hoax means there is that it's drastically or to some degree overrepresented in the media with respect to how often it happens. Right? We're agreeing that's what it. So instead of saying hoax, let's just say overrepresented there. Right, and it might make us not be more clear about the discussion, because he's saying that it's he's basically saying it's overrepresented, the amount they put in the media versus what's real, right? And so when he said, let's say that you say that, right? You make the claim that it's underrepresented, right? You're going to have some arbitrary standard for what you no, I'm saying if you were to say that. I'm not saying that you need to. saying if you were, wouldn't you agree that you had some arbitrary standard of what constitutes it not being, not being overrepresented in the media, right?
Well, I don't know if it would be arbitrary, because the fact that I pointed to earlier, that the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI pointed out that it's a huge issue, and in fact, other countries have been issuing travel warnings to America because of the levels of attacks, and those attacks are also related to white supremacy and white nationalism. A number of events.
Yeah, I totally grant you all that. I totally grant you all that. Definitely, it's really bad or whatever.
So then, so then you don't think that it matters what what do you call them? The FBI and all that. You don't think it matters what they have to say. You don't think it matters what other countries have to say.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Okay.
So not saying that at all. I'm saying that if let's say one person says this is overrepresented with respect to the portrayal in the media, then it happens, and one person says it's underrepresented with respect to the portrayal of the media to how much it really happens, right? Now, when they say overrepresented, it's not just to say it's 0.5% higher, so it's overrepresented. It's like people, don't you agree that people mean something significant, something statistically significant? So what they mean there is going to be like kind of arbitrary. Is there some objective standard of what it means?
What's arbitrary is how much the news chooses to report on it. But the issue isn't whether or not the news reports on it too much or too little.
You're not understanding me. I don't know if it's deliberate. I don't think it's deliberate. Look, let me see if I can give you a concrete example. Let's say that I say, look, it's 10%. They show this 10% more in the media than it happens. That's overrepresented, right? And someone goes,
I think that's the confusion right there. When you say 10% more than it happens, what does that mean?
Well, we're talking about listen, we're talking about overrepresentation in the media. So it needs to overrepresent what? The actual sample, which means reality. Reality. Okay?
Oh, what the point is what?
Well,
would that look like? Like
they
would like make up like terrorist attacks by white supremacists? Is that how you overrepresent it? The point is, he's confused as to how you overrepresent such a thing. Like, what does that look like in real life? Is it like making up that some terrorist attack or some violent act was perpetrated by white supremacists? Is that what you mean by?
That's confusing.
Yeah, I know. It's just weird.
No. Let me see if I can make my position.
It's like I think the only way that you can talk about it besides that is saying that there's a fixed amount of, let's say, time that is merited. Well, that news outlets should talk about with regard to white supremacy, given the amount of violent acts that they commit, and that somehow the media or whatever is like going over that amount.
Yeah. I'm happy to use that definition.
Yeah, but that's just stupid as fuck, right? Like there's like it's gonna be so arbitrary, right?
Yeah. That's what ultimately I'm saying here. And look, my point is this. Look, let's abstract from this bullshit discussion about whoever the fuck this political commentator is. Let's just have an abstract discussion. If I said this in its portrayal in the media, this happening is actually portrayed with like 10% more than it actually happens. And I know that notion probably isn't even coherent at all. But what I'm saying is, if someone were to say that, well, it's actually not, for it to be, like if one person says it's 10% more, therefore it's overrepresented. If someone challenged him and said, I think it needs to be a little bit more than 10% to be overrepresented, would there be a fact of the matter about that, or is it arbitrary? That's my point.
It's subjective.
Yes, that's my point. And so going back to so this should have been so super, we could have got done with this so quickly. My point was this. Lance said something like, or Chum said something like,
yeah, it's fine. You can call me whatever.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So you're okay with me calling you that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay,
I mean, it's my YouTube channel anyway, so.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So anyways, Lance said that, and so, oh shit, I lost my train of thought. Fuck.
Yeah, I see what Shamos is saying. So to say that it's over or underrepresented is not to say that there's actually some fact of the matter. You're just really Like a lot of times, you're just expressing like a value judgment.
Yeah, you're just
right.
saying,
Like it seems
like
to you. It seems to you through anecdotal,
right?
Like
Yeah,
through anecdotal. Jesus Christ, through anecdotal experience, right? That it happens more frequently or less frequently, as opposed to what one personally sees on the internet or in the news.
Right. And
but
what
I
I was
don't
trying to
like the point is that
I was
if you
trying to
say
circle to a larger point. The larger point was just this. Lance had said something like, you know, he's done something wrong here. You know what? You know, he said something factually, or yeah. That's not what I wanted. He said something factually incorrect. Okay, and that's what I want to take issue with. When Lance said he said something factually incorrect, that has to do because Lance is already presupposing that what it is to be overrepresented. See what I mean? His statement presupposes already his arbitrary standard, and so that's all I was getting at when you
but we
I don't understand. So Declan, can you explain to me what
we put that disagreement to the side, right? I think that the whole disagreement or misunderstanding was due to the fact that Lance thought that what overrepresentation would be is that somehow the news is like misreporting the amount of bad things, let's say violence, that the white supremacists are committing. But obviously that's not what he meant.
So no,
I
look,
guess shameless. But like the point is that what is it?
Are you done?
Yeah.
You wanted to hear what you had to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, all I was going to say is like, there's another aspect of this also, which is that to say that something is overrepresented sort of, or underrepresented, like sort of gives the illusion or actually implies that there's some sort of deception going on, right? Like, you got to think about like what that would mean if it were to happen. It would mean like a news organization playing over and over and over and over, day in and day out, like news broadcasts of singular events that are happening, in which it may be happening in those areas, but given its coverage is sort of giving them the impression that it's happening all over the country all the time, right? So it is a very subjective thing. Like to say that it's over or underrepresented just really means like you're just commenting on the methodology by which it's being reported on, not necessarily how much it's happening overall.
Yeah. It's like all that's being said, right, is that like this topic is being touched more, reported on more, or talked about more than it deserves, quote unquote, to be talked about or something. And it's warranted, right? And that's obviously a value judgment. But, you know, the point is like he's either, if this guy, if I heard correctly what he said,
but even in the context, because the context includes him saying
completely deficient with his like word usage, right?
Right. But yeah, and even in the context includes him saying that he doesn't think that there's enough in the country to fill up a football stadium. So like in the context, he's saying, basically he's just saying there's not that many of them. So anytime the news, or like, I don't know if I'll say anytime, but when the news reports on an incident of white supremacist violence, they're blowing it out of proportion. They're making it out to be like some serious problem.
Well, that would be consistent if he was right, though, right? Like that would be consistent. Like, so, I mean, that's completely consistent with his view. If it is the case that it's being over-reported, you might expect like some sort of phenomenon like that, right? Like imagine, for example, hold on.
That didn't seem relevant to what Chum was saying.
Wait, but
he's just saying that what he said was factually incorrect.
Yeah, I see Chum's point, and I think I could be really charitable to it, and I actually think that it gets him to what he was originally trying to say, if that's what he meant. Because if you look with respect to that, let's say that the numbers really are that it could fill 3 or 4 football stadiums or something, right, or 5. So he's greatly wrong about the numbers by huge magnitudes. Okay, And then he says, "Oh, it's overrepresented," but it's only overrepresented on the basis that he's fucking retarded, and only doesn't know how much is going on. He's ignorant to it. You know what I mean? And so, with respect to that, I think Chum is right. I think if when he's saying that with respect to like it's being overrepresented, he's actually making a claim that's kind of wrong-headed. Because he's not even sure how many is the sample to be going. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, the idea is that he doesn't even, like, he's ignorant of the standard. Like, he doesn't even really know what the standard is.
Right.
Like, all these, that's why.
Isn't the point that he said that it's a hoax?
That's why I said in the beginning this is all going to be based on anecdotal evidence, right? There's no way, unless he looks at the bare statistics, whether it's actually being overrepresented or underrepresented, then even then you have to decide whether it's there's some sort of normative standard or not.
Yeah, but even
you cut out Shamos.
Oh, this is interesting. Now Declan's arguing Shamos' original thing.
Wait, but isn't the point that he said that it's a hoax, that he used that word? Or did I mishear?
Yeah, he used that word.
Well, but that's more interesting, right? I think, to talk about.
But we were talking about that we all agreed that it meant overrepresentation. That's what we were talking about, the hoax. We were talking about, thought what he meant.
That's just like thinking that he's like deficient, like severely deficient in his use of like the language, like a hoax doesn't mean that,
Well,
yeah, I think a loose sense of the word hoax does mean that. A loose sense of the word.
That's right. That's what I was going to say, is that when he says, this is what I take him to mean by it, the hoax is the under or over representation, right?
Right. They're trying to pull the wool over people's eyes, hoax them. Yeah, that's an actual usage within natural language, Young. Trust me.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong, I guess, but yeah, it's probable that I'm wrong. But I mean, it just seems like unlikely to me that that's like that the claim was that conservative, I guess,
Well, I mean, I think it was not a conservative
I feel like it's
claim.
Like highly plausible that he's saying something like that, that it's being something akin to like that it's being portrayed as like a national problem when it isn't, or something like that.
That is what he means. That's consistent.
Yeah, but that's different. That's different from just saying that it's overreported. Right?
Well, that would be
overreported. Because overreported can just mean that it's something that's highly problematic, right? But it's people make it out to be a bigger problem than it is, while it's still a problem, right? But what I take that to mean when I hear it in a vacuum is merely something like that. It's just a very small issue, and people are making it into a problem to begin with. That it's not actually a problem, that it's like not a reality, right? And that's consistent with saying that it's like with his claim of the football field, that it's just like a very small group, that it's not really like a security threat or anything like that,
Well, look, the thing is, though, is that, I mean, the way that I see it is that what's being discussed is whether it is a national problem, right? And it's in that dialectic that he's saying that that claim is a hoax, and that it being a national emergency and virtue of the reporting is it's the reporting also that leads to the hoax.
Yeah, I understand. I was just trying to make a distinction between saying that something is merely being talked about above the level that it's warranted to talk about that, given that it's a problem but not that big of a problem, and saying that it's not a problem at all, which is what I intuitively took it to mean when I heard like hoax.
Okay.
But again, that may
so
be
it's like overrepresented in the media is one way that we were looking at it, and the way that you looked at it naturally was like it's overrepresented with the actual threat that it poses to the country. Or
yeah, that's like not really a threat. Like that seems very consistent with the idea that, or with like the comment that if you take all these people together, they wouldn't like fit a football field or something, right? That's like it seems to me like a rhetorical way to downplay the threat, like a lot.
Like I agree with Declan. I think they're compatible, because he would just want to say something like it's not as not that much or something like that.
I mean, it just seems to me that when you say something like you can fit these people in a room or in a very small space comparatively to the country, you're basically trying to say that people are just making a fuss about nothing or very little, which again, I think is different than saying that it's making a bit more of a fuss than is warranted, right?
Yeah.
I actually personally don't think that the whole thing with white supremacy is a hoax. I just think it's a reaction from what's been going on from the left over the past
May, do you have fucking eyes?
Few years.
That's probably true.
I mean, that's like.
Tom, did you see that?
He's talking about a game. So I don't know why.
Is May fucking walled me off?
Look, you can't talk
team.
about games right now.
All right, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It just pissed me off.
I mean, I think you're partially correct. I think like when these like right-wing phenomena arise, it's like partly the fault of like a failed leftist movement normally, but I mean, there's other factors, I guess.
Well, don't get me wrong. I think that there are white supremacists out there. I mean, we know of one of them, or at least a Nazi, right? That don't need the left to do anything. But I think like largely what's been going on has been like a reaction to the fucking leftist riots and the shit that's been going on the campuses. And that's not to say that it's justified, because I parse those two things out completely differently. I just think it's cause and effect. Whenever, I mean, it's sort of like the Force. When the light rises, the dark side rises to meet it in equal power. It's sort of weird that way.
Maybe I missed something, but what do you mean when you say what the left has been doing on college campuses?
Don't they have a reason for doing that?
Well, no. Well, hold on a second. What I mean by that is like I'm referring more to like the Berkeley riots and the stopping traffic in the middle of cities, and a lot of the protests that have been going on in campuses over really stupid shit.
Didn't MLK stop traffic?
Outward blaming of like white people in specific for issues, that sort of thing. I think those are sorts of issues that are like that a lot of white nationalists and fucking neo-Nazis sort of salivate over to get to rally their base.
I'm not sure I agree with that, actually. That seems like something that, conservative, maybe alt-right, not quite neo-Nazi groups would react to and say, that if we don't take action, the left is going to take over this country. They'll dominate every aspect of your life. But it seems like when we're talking about, white supremacist groups like the KKK or neo-Nazi groups like, for instance, Adam Waffen, right? They're more interested in what they perceive to be systemic issues, regardless of whether or not they're on the left or on the right. So, for instance, they
have paranoia.
Just as a quick example, like Adam Waffen is on record saying things like capitalism facilitates the greed and the interests of the Jewish Zionists, right? The Jewish overlords, shit like that, which doesn't have any bearing on the left or the right, really. It's just just a racial thing.
No, but the point is that these, like, I think right wingers have exactly these kinds of paranoias, right? Historically, at least, right? The point is like that they think that this kind of ideology, like leftism, or more specifically communism, or even more specifically like a Marxist strand, is like being imposed on society, and that's the threat, right?
Yeah, like don't get confused.
Like when people say it's the Jews, right? Like who do you think? What do you think of what what do you think is their opinion on communists? Like, do you think, you honestly think, you don't think that they don't think that communism is some sort of Jewish ploy, or that it's like some Jewish orchestrated?
I'm saying that it seems to be the case that these legitimately neo-Nazi groups seem to disconnect Jews from ideologies like communism or capitalism, right?
Well, but
it's just in virtue of them. It's just in virtue of them being Jewish.
You guys are missing the point. Look, the left doesn't have to be spouting like the absolute antithesis against neo-Nazis to get them to rally their base, right? Like the ideology doesn't have to be necessarily diametrically opposed. The point is that with some of the shit that they're saying, it can give momentum to a lot of like extreme right-wing people to rally their own base, right? So let's say, for example, what I mean by this is like, let's say the left is saying, I hate all white people should die. Okay, yeah, they're not necessarily saying anything like let's support all the Jews, right? But the neo-Nazis are going to use that momentum for their own base in order to move forward, because that's one thing they agree with is that part of the antithesis. That makes sense.
I mean, sure. Look. Well, all I'm saying is that it's part of their rhetoric and part of their belief, right? That all the things that they dislike systemically, right? They think that an extension of that is what for leftists propose. Really, like these people, especially like alt-right neo-Nazi or Nazi groups, right? Like they don't make distinctions between their critique of globalism and their critique of communism. They just see that as being the same thing, orchestrated by the same people, et cetera, right? So I feel, at least if you look at it historically, that these kinds of right-wing extremist ideologies, like it's endemic of them to be anti-communist, right? Exactly because they don't see a distinction between what's going on and like some sort of communist plan, right?
I guess what I was saying was that doesn't seem to be an interesting thing to say if we acknowledge that they would also be anti-capitalist, right? Like any criticisms, I think you alluded to this a little bit in what you were saying. The criticisms of communism are not going to be necessarily exclusive to communism when they're offered by a neo-Nazi cell, right?
But it's
you could
not
just
the
as easily
that are out there yelling loudly. I'm sorry, it's not the capitalists.
Right, that's fine. But just to address what Young said, like when they say, the communists are trying to seize control of the government and bring about a new world order, right? That shit just as easily applies to the fucking alleged Jewish conspiracy. And plenty of neo-Nazi groups think that Jews play a significant role in global capitalism.
But that's what I'm saying. The point is that I agree with you. That there's no distinction in their critique or their dislike of capitalism, right, and that there's dislike of communism. They just think, what do you think they're saying when they're saying, like, what do you think they think of when they say globalism, or what the extension of globalism is? They think that it's some sort of like communist internationalism or some shit, right, like global communism, right? So like, I was just saying, right, that in any case, right, like there may be exceptions, right, that these groups are going to be fundamentally like paranoid or scared, or at least antagonizing of communists. Like at least I don't see like any reason to believe they're not going to be.
Right. That's why I was saying I was agreeing with you. Like take the fucking self-proclaimed national socialists or fascists that show up on Discord, right? You can hear their criticisms of communism and Marxism one day, and then 2 days from that conversation, ask them similar questions about capitalism. And Young, I'm sure you'd agree, they're going to offer functionally similar, if not completely identical, criticisms of each system.
Yeah.
Right. Like they don't have objections. They don't have politically sound objections to communism. They don't have politically sound objections to capitalist mechanisms. They just think it's part of an overarching conspiracy, and the ideology doesn't really matter for that. They're fucking lunatics.
I mean, I'm just saying they identify people with a certain ideology as being the same kind of enemy. So that, referencing back to what Declan was actually saying, that I mean, it's important, I guess, to realize that it's always going to be the case that as long as Nazis are around or whatever, that they're going to have like this sort of antagonism and interest in, again, antagonizing leftists of whatever sort,
You could actually parse this.
And so on.
You could actually parse this out in like an experience that goes on here in the room, right? All I'm saying is like, let's say Tasteless comes in here, right? And let's say someone's like, I really fucking hate Tom. He doesn't have to be aligned in any other fucking like other ideologies that person has in order to be like, that's right, fucking Tom sucks.
Right, like if Jack said he hated Tom, for
instance. Yeah, now imagine the reverse, right? Like let's imagine Tom, or not Tom, imagine someone came in here that was completely new and was like, I think Tasteless fucking sucks. Fuck Tasteless. I hate Tasteless. He's a piece of shit. Like, Tasteless doesn't have to hate the fact that, like, that person's a capitalist or a communist in order to, like, rally the people around him to be against people who hate Tasteless. And that's exactly what I'm talking about with regard to the left and the right. Like, the right has basically this newest movement is like a reaction to, like, what's being said in the left. Fuck white people are making black people slaves, white people blah, 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 blah. Fuck white privilege and all this shit. There's a fuck ton of dumbasses out there who just happen to be racists who are using that to rally their base against the left, right? They're using that as like a rallying cry.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I think I was confused initially, but that I agree with. Like the idea being, you know, you get approached by a representative, this is ridiculous, but we'll just say somebody from a neo-Nazi group, and their sales pitch to you, so to speak, is, look, capitalism and our current system of government has clearly failed in its attempts to stop the communists from taking control. Something outlandish like that. And they're not going to appeal to that person on the basis of, you know, hating Jews, right? They're not going to fully disclose their ideology. They're just going to say, if you want to stop communism, we are the only people that can. Right, we need a third approach, something like that. Declan.
Yeah,
that I agree with. That's fine.
It's all the anarchists' fault.
This is true.
I never really got anarchy, to be honest with you. I never got
rules are gay. It's when you don't like discipline of any sort.
Yeah, rules are gay.
Anarchy is when you go to Hot Topic and buy really edgy clothing.
I remember when I was 16 years old, to me it's the most random thing ever, but I remember I was at, was it Pigeon Forge? I don't know if you guys know where Pigeon Forge is. It's in Tennessee.
No.
And I was 16 years old and I smoked, and I was there with my mom, and I was outside smoking a cigarette, and this fucking like anarchist walks up to me. He was like a part of like some demonstration that was going on. And he had like this denim jacket cut off the sleeves and had an upside down American flag on it. It's like, yo, bro, can I get a cigarette? It's like, yeah, sure. That's the closest I've ever come to anarchy.
Nice, nice.
For some people, it's a good excuse to be a loser.
Your anarchists in the U.S. are like pussies. Like anarchists, like as much as I don't really like anarchists, like in Europe, they're like wild as fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
same with Antifa. Yeah, I heard Antifa in Europe is like.
Yeah, I'm talking about Antifa. Antifa is like very commonly in Europe composed of anarchists, and they do crazy shit. They like fucking shoot right wingers and shit. They just gun them down.
There's a meme about this, Young. It's like, you know, anarchists in the U.S. just fucking walk around in Washington, D.C. with signs. Anarchists in France will fucking murder you if they think you're a threat to the working class or something. Like literally just gun you down.
Card in their pocket.
No, I mean, like, if there's one thing to be said about like European anarchism is that I see it as being like really like composed of like mostly like actually radical working class people. Like in places like Greece and so on, these anarchist movements are very, very very prominent, and they're pretty fucking violent. They're kind of vile.
France has, the reason I mentioned France is because, maybe you can correct me if I'm mistaken about this, but the leftist presence in France, like, and you know, anarchists and other Marxists combined is very prominent, and like you said, they're extremely violent in France, particularly, from what I've read.
I'm not sure. I'm just not well read, I guess. Like what I'm aware
like
of.
You've seen the news stories of
is that like black bloc people are like, I mean, they get violent. It's not like the wild shit that happens in like rural areas, I guess, or like in smaller places.
I'm done with Overwatch for now, by the way.
I was just saying that, like, I mean, I know that in France there's or like in Germany, for instance, they're very active. Like the Black Bloc people, the people who just protest mass and they throw shit, Molotov cocktails, and so on. It gets violent, I guess, but I was talking more so in places like Greece, where there's like, on top of them being anarchists, there's like kind of actual anarchy because like it's a failed state, right? So they just do whatever the fuck they want to their opposition. They just like shoot them up, beat them up, just like insanely violent.
What are we even talking about anymore?
Well, I'm sure you've seen the news stories of riots in France where people literally fight the police, bash them.
Yeah, but what's the whole point of all this?
We're just saying.
I don't think anybody's disagreeing, right? Like, I think y'all agree that if there's cases where there's like dumb things going on in the colleges, or someone can perceive those things as being dumb, then those organizations can use those things to.
Not really. We weren't even talking about that. We were just talking about anarchists generally and how like they do all.
No.
Yeah.
What makes you think that National Socialism doesn't have specific criticisms of capitalism versus globalism?
Nice
I like
PFP.
that PFP there.
That's not what they said.
That's
nice.
very
great
progressive
PFP. Iron.
Thanks, bud.
Welcome back, Iron. Nice to see
Yo,
you.
what's up, Iron?
LGBT friends?
I don't know
I've
why
only
you
seen
would
now.
think you wouldn't. Iron and I've been friends for forever, so I mean.
Yeah, but you're anti-LGBTG thing.
How do you figure that?
You're not even one of them.
I'm bi.
No, you're not.
I'm not.
You're taking the piss out of trans people by having a dick and a vagina. You're being disrespectful.
She's not trans. She's.
I didn't say. Yeah, I'm saying he's making fun of him.
Trolling.
Jovan, are you saying that they never said that National Socialists don't have independent critiques of capitalism versus communism or globalism?
When did I say that?
I am technically trans, though.
I'm asking you if you said that. That's what I think I heard.
I don't think I said that.
Oh, did somebody else say that?
I said that it seems to me that when you talk or when you're referring to the like standard neo-Nazi or whatever, that they think that there's some overarching conspiracy by some group that leads, I don't know, like the globalist struggle simultaneously with the communist ones, and that it's like the same group of people perpetuating that.
There's probably significant overlap between like internationalist communists and globalists, sure, but I don't think that's what you were saying before, right? When it was just you and I think the other leftists were kind of like patting each other on the back. You were saying much stronger claims, it sounded like.
I think you're being paranoid.
I'm not being paranoid. Did you not say that National Socialists don't have critiques of capitalism independent of their critiques of globalism?
Oh, fuck.
I literally said that. Sparing whatever person outside the norm, that is to say people that you wouldn't typically, not your typical Nazi or whatever,
okay.
That they probably don't have a view.
Right, so
they probably don't have a view that it's separate groups perpetual. Let me talk, sorry. Right, that it's probably not the case that they think that it's separate people or like a separate ethnicity or whatever that's carrying on both struggles.
Are you just saying something kind of trivial like your average Nazi isn't specifically well-trained in philosophy or doesn't know all the arguments or isn't really well-trained in politics?
Yeah, I don't know why you think that's trivial. That's just descriptive.
It just doesn't seem very interesting. Like when you want to say something about the philosophy or the political doctrine itself and its attitudes?
Well, the point was to say regarding pertaining a claim that Declan had made, then it then seems obvious, right, that
such a Nazi, right, or such a person would typically have antagonism specifically against communists as well, or for leftists as well. Because I guess the claim that was being made before, if I'm not misunderstanding, is that like that there's some wiggle room, I guess, for far right people to find themselves in some sort of agreement, or that they don't antagonize, generally speaking, communists. And I think pointing out that fact that I did, which you see as trivial, is relevant to the discussion. So I think it is interesting.
Yeah, so obviously there's significant overlap for National Socialists and other Marxist socialists, right? That's why the group of people that subscribe to both ideologies tends to largely overlap and be fluid, right? It's because a lot of people who subscribe to Marxist socialism currently haven't really been told the alternative option, right? And people generally will fall into line with like whatever racial group is going to serve their interests, which is like a common criticism of intersectional socialists currently of like the broad alignment of Marxist socialists.
I don't understand what this has to do with what I said.
Well, it just means that obviously they can both criticize capitalists, even though National Socialists typically hate communists.
Yeah, for sure. I was just saying that the relevance of what I was saying is that it's still going to be the case if you take this average person, right, and you agreed with it, that given that they'll see like communists as being an enemy, or some figure, like some sort of figure to be antagonized just as globalists, that it's going to be the case that in fact it's always that it's going to be part of the rhetoric to suppress, I don't know, communist or to antagonize communist activity or far leftist activity. So again, right, like I'm just contesting that what I said was for one trivial. It probably obviously isn't, but it's also interesting given the context of the conversation.
So it sounds like you're just kind of talking out your ass then, right? You're just kind of making stuff up. Like you're not saying something concrete, because it's obviously demonstrably the case that National Socialists will oftentimes speak to leftists like anarchists, Marxists, etc., and try to show them that there's an alternative option, there's an alternative critique of capitalism that doesn't rely on like an internationalist, non-racialist perspective, right? That there's other ways of viewing the world, other ways of criticizing capitalism.
I don't see how that has anything to do with it, given that what my claim is that if there's some entity that politically organizes itself around Marxist principles or whatever, that are non-national socialists, they organize themselves politically after this more orthodox Marxism, whatever, or Marxism that's not of this variety that you claim is like some other option, that those groups will be antagonized by your average Nazi, right? I don't see how what you said touches that in any way.
Because you seem to be suggesting that they aren't capable of negotiating with them, right? It's like obviously, let's not use this weird language that obscures things, right? So like Nazis hate Jews, right? And Nazis think that Jews are trying to implement communism on like a world spanning level, and so they fight against that. But there's a whole swath of like non-Jewish anarcho-communists and all kinds of different communists that could be negotiated with or talked to. And they share a lot of criticisms that Nazis have of capitalism. So I'm just not sure what you're talking about when you say that like there's no way for them to agree with each other, or like Nazis don't have criticisms of capitalism outside of criticisms of globalism.
I mean, like you just literally admitted that what I was saying, on one hand you're saying that what I'm saying is trivial, but somehow it's also wrong. And, the point is that I'm not saying that there's no possibility of them ever communicating. I'm just saying that given what I outlined, this average Nazi that I'm talking about is going to be antagonistic, and you agreed with that. You said that it was trivial, right? So I'm not sure why you're just pointing out to some possible outlier as being something that's in contradiction.
I'm saying your average Nazi is antagonistic to your average communist, but I'm saying they're not necessarily not necessarily antagonistic to each other, and there's like no principle except
no
for
one
a small
is saying,
minority.
No one is saying that. I didn't say that is the point. You're just, I don't know what you're doing.
Hey, Declan, are you around?
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, do you have any time now?
Give me about an hour if you could.
Okay. I sent you a bunch of notes and so forth. If you have any time to look at it.
Yeah, I haven't got a chance to look at it yet, but I will here soon.
Yeah, probably be quicker than us having to hang out.
Need to regroup.
Could you take it to gaming chat, please?
Yeah, just let's just not do the gaming thing in the main room, please. Thank you.
I just don't understand why you guys don't use the in-game voice client, because you can use it in Discord at the same time.
I don't have that problem. There.
Yeah, I mean, the other people that seem to not be able to figure it out. Who couldn't figure that out.
I hate coder memes.
Same.
But so was it, because I missed, I guess, the tail end. Well, I don't know, it was like a fucking day-long discussion, but so was it the case that JJ was able to trick all you guys into forgiving him, and people aren't